Damian from WeTransfer, you've recently sold the company, and you've also got this sort of amazing claim about being the world's biggest, most successful B Corp.
I always say to my wife that it's a blessing and a curse.
You probably knew that you had 6 to 12 months of hell coming.
It's the scariest, I think, in terms of like all deals that you can do.
How do you feel about the exit, both financially and emotionally?
I resigned halfway through the process. I got so annoyed that I resigned. That changed everything.
How does a conversation like that happen at leadership level and with the team?
Miserably.
How much did the company sell for in the end?
Everybody wanted the billion, and I struggled massively with this idea of being content, of having enough.
As if like 750 million is not good enough.
It was never about making money.
Okay, so you regret it?
There was a lot of pressure on the company to perform, but that didn't happen.
Did you just subtly tell us that you got 100 million?
You know, I'm not allowed to say exactly which number it is.
Well, you've just revealed quite a lot. Damian from WeTransfer, very excited to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I guess where I want to start is you've recently sold the company, right? WeTransfer just went through arguably the fastest exit process in history, 6 weeks from start to finish. Let's get on to that. Obviously, steps towards that. You had a failed IPO. You had a very impressively high valuation at some point. I've read reports of up to 2 billion. That's obviously been a real journey for you. I want to take it back to the start.
Okay.
Tell us how WeTransfer started. Why did you start it? What was the original inspiration?
So you got to go right back to 2009. Very, very different place, environment, internet than it is today. So Barack Obama had just come into power. Lady Gaga's top of the charts. The internet is still relatively rough, ugly, probably is the right term. And if you were in an agency or you were any way involved in creativity, then probably half your agency was still sending stuff around on DVDs and with bike couriers. And the only way really to sort of share stuff, if you weren't sending stuff on a bike courier from one side of London or Paris to the other, was through some sort of awkward FTP site or maybe Rapid Share or Mega Upload or something like that. But the majority of those businesses were basically in the business of porn, piracy. Mega Upload's business model, run by the infamous Kim.com, was all about promoting the most pirated content. And he proudly did this, for years, and then ran away and hid in Hong Kong, and now is in New Zealand facing extradition still.
You've always struck me as a classier version of Kim.com, actually, now you mention it. Yeah,
you do have to check out Kim.com's website because he throws these occasional parties where he rents in people like the FBI to come and track him down, and then he manages to escape from them and then appears and DJs from the roof of his New Zealand villa. It's tragic is probably the right word. So that was basically the marketplace, and WeTransfer was really just the antithesis of you send it, Mega Upload, Rapid Share. You send it, WeTransfer. And the idea was really to create something that was simple and well designed. And I can't overemphasize enough how ugly the internet was in 2009. No one was doing design. Design was a thing that took place in books, still outdoors, on TV. But the internet was really all about banner advertising, awful, ugly, annoying, irritating. And engineering was a thing that everyone focused on online. So, sites were driven by engineers, programmed by programmers. And WeTransfer was built in Flash, like the worst piece of software you could ever use to create something. Terrible for SEO, impossible to do anything with. It was sort of static and, unmovable, but that's what we knew how to create in. And you could actually produce something quite beautiful in Flash, very simply. And we had a couple of servers, a site that was basically really easy that anybody could use it, no sign up, and one simple ad format in the background. Again, trying to be the antithesis of what was being offered on the internet at the time. And, it hasn't really changed that much. I mean, to be frank, it was good. It made sense. It was easy to use. It still is. And it was a time when you didn't have to spend a single penny on Facebook or Instagram or anything else.
For growth.
Nothing. So all we needed to do was basically to make sure that somebody used the service, uploaded something, and shared it with somebody else. And that virality meant that we went from like 0 to 200,000 users in no time. Nalden, who is main founder, design sort of, I guess, visionary for the platform, had already a blog, and he was like the equivalent of Mashable at the time, and he was basically promoting it on his platform. And with the combination of that and StumbleUpon, which again in 2009 was a big deal, it's definitely not a big deal anymore. I do think it still exists, but obviously doesn't mean anything. But it was.
Tell us what StumbleUpon was for those who might not be pushing into their 50s. Guesswork here, mate.
So I'm not nearly 50, but
sorry, presumptuous. Pushing into their 40s.
StumbleUpon was a sort of like Russian roulette of websites, and it would just throw up suggestions that you might find interesting, and it could be anything from I don't know, a car search site to a music site to WeTransfer. And if StumbleUpon featured you at that time and basically threw out a suggestion to all the people that had signed up to their service, you were guaranteed a certain amount of traffic. They featured us, and it blew up. And that's what happened time and time again. Basically, people would discover us, they'd talk about it. Organic growth would continue. One person uploaded something, 3 people would download it, and before you know it, you get to like 10 million users.
I suppose the fascinating thing is that people were sharing it because of the utility of the time. People were like, this is amazing as functionality, right? Just for the context.
It was unusual because it was so simple. It was unusual because it wasn't trying to trap you. You send it was, upload something. Oh, it's really big. Let me throttle it and annoy you until you decide to upgrade to the premium service, and then we'll spam you and irritate you and everything else. And every other service was basically, if you want this, we're going to hit you with 1,000 skyscraper banner ads until you basically have earned enough money to allow you to do this for free. And our service just came across as if it was like over generously beautiful and free. And so many people, still so many people would say, I don't get it. What's the catch? How do you make money? Doesn't make any sense. Do you have ads? And we'd be like, what are you looking at? And I'm like, oh yeah, is that an ad? And that was like the greatest compliment.
So in the early days, how did you make money?
Ads.
Right. That was it.
But I suppose your unique proposition was obviously, back to your point. So there's that famous John Hegarty quote, when everyone zigs, you zag. And you were talking about banner ads and all of the things all over the site. And you guys just had a full page ad. And that's all you could do. And it was stunning. And you know what? I just sent to you on WhatsApp, like 2 days ago, someone doing probably the 50 billionth breakdown of a WeTransfer ad campaign, but it was Roger Federer and Nadal, right? Doing some exploring on a mountain in Louis Vuitton luggage and stuff. And just 2 legends going on a journey, and WeTransfer is like, their main thing that they're doing with it. It's a perfect example of what a compliment to you. Yeah. You get Louis Vuitton and 2 of the greatest legends of sports ever, and that's where they're choosing to place that ad.
Our biggest advertisers are the luxury world is like 11 out of the 12 biggest luxury brands advertise with WeTransfer. It's also it's the most brand safe advertising on the entire internet, and I'm not overselling this or exaggerating it. If you buy an ad on WeTransfer, it doesn't sit alongside an article about Israel or Palestine or Donald Trump or whoever else. It's just an ad. There's no content around it. You don't sit alongside another ad. So you're not competing like you might do on the New York Times for ensuring that this is safe and the brand's not going to get offended. And luxury, it's very, very important for them. They don't want to sit next to another ad for another luxury goods firm. And they definitely don't want to sit next to a political ad that may alienate their customer base. Yeah. So it's like...
They just want traffic and simplicity.
And beauty. And that's what it offers. And in the beginning, it was really, really tough. We were basically pitching all the time. We'd go and speak to media companies, advertising agencies, and we'd say, listen, for 16 banner ads, you can have 1 ad on WeTransfer. It's the same price as a banner ad, but it will give you 5 times the click. And people go, yeah, great. Can we put it into the programmatic formula? Like, no. Okay, thanks. Good night. Time and time again. And then, after like 2 years of beating down doors, we actually did this ad where Chrome, this is how friggin' old I am, Chrome had just launched.
Pushing 40s, calm down.
I know, but Chrome had just launched. People would be like, Chrome just launched? I thought it'd been around forever. No, it didn't exist until like 2012, I think.
Yeah.
And WeTransfer would just ran better on Chrome. It was faster. So if you were using Safari or whatever else you might have been using back then. Firefox. Chrome was just like up to 19 times faster. So we just ran ads saying, use Chrome. WeTransfer runs better on Chrome. Installs of Chrome were crazy. Suddenly we were driving it to Google. Essence Media could see what we were driving in terms of conversions, and they called us up and started spending 200K a month.
Wow.
And it was the truth. It wasn't that we were trying to sell ads, but the truth was that actually our service was better. And a lot of people still to this day will get annoyed with us because they'll say, WeTransfer is so slow. And be like, is it? Can we just do a speed test? Oh, you've got like a 9 megabit connection and you're trying to upload 17 gigs. It's not us, it's you. But people don't want to hear that. So they would always blame us. We were like, if you use Chrome, it's just going to make our lives so much simpler. And it turned out to be one of the biggest advertisers we ever had. And
I read that you effectively bootstrapped the company to begin with for much longer than is normal.
6 years.
6 years of bootstrapping, and then you took investment.
Yep.
So what was the thinking behind that?
Of bootstrapping?
Of bootstrapping for so long and obviously being successful and then moving into taking investment.
Okay, so the honest answer is that we were a Dutch startup and we were a design-driven startup. And people don't want to hear that. People wanted to hear that you were a startup, not even coming from London, right? Ideally, you're coming from Silicon Valley and you're for, I don't know, Stanford, Harvard engineers building something that's going to change the world. And we were like designers or, people from the media world in Amsterdam producing something beautiful that didn't conform to anything, that was really difficult to sell. Like no one was interested in investing in us. So I could take the moral high ground and say we always wanted to bootstrap the business. We had real beef with VCs and we were trying to do something different. No, we desperately wanted to take money because that was the game. Success was that you did angel, seed, series A, B, C. You did all this. TechCrunch was writing about you because you were climbing this pyramid of success. The honest answer is that no one was interested in us because we didn't conform. So we bootstrapped because we had to bootstrap. We were all doing part-time jobs and running consultancies and stuff on the side while WeTransfer was running. I mean, and we had a gallery. We had another app called Cover. We had an artist and algorist platform, which is like NFTs back in 2012. Wow. We had loads of shit going on and around the side to pay the bills to keep all the other sort of stuff going. In 2015, basically, one of our partners had left the company, had quite a big stake, and a couple of others really wanted to get some money out. So that's why we took VC.
We were profitable. You took VC to also do secondary so that you guys actually could live more comfortably as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were paying ourselves like 2.5K for years. And there came a point where it's like, okay, it would be nice to actually be able to,
eat.
Yeah. Well, no, we weren't poor, but, to be able to go on a nice holiday or do something. And what was also the case is that in that time, and thank God it happened. I mean, it was a beautiful thing, actually, that we bootstrapped it in that time period because we demonstrated that we had a business model that worked. We demonstrated that doing something different was really appealing. And by the time actually Highland, who was the investors that came in 2015, turned up, we'd been profitable for 2 years. And we could demonstrate that they didn't need to change anything. This is just working. If they put money in, they would get money out. And I can complain about, where WeTransfer is today or what's going to happen going forwards. But because of that period of actually not conforming and being rejected time and time and time again, we actually proved out a business model that somebody bought into and went, okay, this works. Don't change it. What you're doing with WePresent or whatever else you're doing seems to make sense. Don't get it, but let's not change it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
You raised about 25 million in Series A, is that right?
Yeah.
What valuation? Was that ever disclosed?
50, I think.
50? Well, that's harsh. Feels harsh, that, no? Quite a low valuation.
I think
for
it was
a
15 million.
company.
I think it was 15 million at 50.
Okay, fine. Got it.
If I recall.
Reflecting back on that now, did you take any more rounds after that?
Yeah.
Okay, so reflecting back on that moment, which obviously changed the trajectory for you, right? Changed the course of how you run the business. Would you do it again?
No.
Why not?
It was profitable. I mean, and there are so many things I would do differently. I'm not saying I have regrets, right? Because all these things lead to another conclusion that take you to another door that, leads you down another avenue that turns out, to be beautiful. And there are many beautiful things that have come from it. But it's so easy to look back and go, oh, I would do it so differently now. 2024 is a very different space online in investment, in business, in society than it was in 2015. The context has completely changed. So knowing what I know now, no, I wouldn't do it. The beauty about WeTransfer was actually it's a very, very simple product. It's just like could be run by a few engineers, a few designers, a few customer support people, maybe a team of 50. Could run WeTransfer.
It could be the world's greatest lifestyle business, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been an amazingly beautiful dividend business that just ticks along.
And people never even talk about that, but I mean, as a model, that sounds like the dream. The dream.
I think you don't really set out with the intention of that being the dream, and then if you do the entrepreneurial roller coaster for enough time, you probably realize that really is the dream.
Yeah, I mean, I would say all of my friends now who've been through the sort of tumble dry with VC and PE buyouts and stuff, when you talk to them about what they're creating now, I'd say that 75% of them are creating businesses that they know will pay consistent dividends. They don't care as much about the
valuation and the TechCrunch crap.
Yeah,
Totally.
Our TechCrunch is irrelevant.
It is now, but I mean, the point is still the same. The new TechCrunch, whatever the thing is, right? I guess the point is people are less interested in their ego side of what everyone else thinks about them and more like, well, actually, I'm mature enough now to know what a great business looks like, and it looks like what you're describing.
In 2015, if you were like founder of a successful company, you were nearly like Kanye fucking West. This was serious.
Like a rock star.
Yeah, you were serious business, and people wanted to put you on the front of magazines and all sorts of stuff. There's no white tech bro that's on the front of Time magazine anymore. It's just
unless they're in jail, yeah.
Unless they're in jail.
There's hope for you, yeah. Don't worry about it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so you regret it. You regret that moment in time. So, well, you don't have regrets, but as in you would knowing what you know now.
Differently.
Yeah,
it would be that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you raised a few other rounds in between, and then you had this like whole process with an IPO.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please.
So you raised the Series A money, and then presumably that set you on a treadmill of we will spend more to hit certain targets. And did that lead to multiple different funding rounds? Because presumably you could have kept going at the rate that you were and been happy.
So we didn't follow a particularly conformist path thereafter. The other rounds that followed were also mainly secondary. Right. So removing other founders from the business. There was never massive pressure from our investors to overspend. To go for all growth, for growth at all cost. I would never say that they were particularly brutal or harsh or pushy or anything else. In actual fact, we were left alone to do what was working for the majority of the time. The moment things got trickier was when it was heading towards an IPO. That changed everything. Suddenly, we were employing very different types of people. We were ramping up in terms of the number of employees that we had, the level of like middle management that needed to be in place. For an IPO, you need to have an awful lot of different roles that never have existed in our time. And an awful lot of that is policy and process and procedure that it's difficult to understand, I think. But we went from probably, there's numbers I'm terrible with numbers. So we went from like 150 employees to 250 in the space of 6 months or something.
Wow.
Gearing up for the IPO.
Over the last decade, Chris and I have started over a dozen businesses. It's not something we're particularly proud of, by the way, but it means we've had a lot of exposure to different business banks. You try one, you're not so happy, try another, you're not so happy. The cycle goes on. By this point, between us, we were laughing, but we tried them all. There was one we actually hadn't, and it's because they're newer and we weren't really familiar with the fact that they had this option. So we wanted to try that based on our own knowledge and compare it. And I tell you what, it is head and shoulders above, and we are thrilled to be using and partnering with Wise Business.
Basically, Wise Business is the only account you need to get paid, pay employees and suppliers, and manage your business's money in multiple currencies.
Exactly. With Wise, you can do business across the world, pay, get paid, and manage your business's international money with ease.
And look, here's the thing. You actually save money as you grow. No hidden fees, no sneaky markups on exchange rates, and no ongoing subscription costs. It's like finding money in your pocket that you didn't know was there.
But my favorite part, and this is crucial, it's just so damn easy to use. I know because I'm the one who set it up for this company.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're lazy. I was never going to get you to do it. But anyway, you can make payments in as little as a few seconds, and it integrates with all your business software.
You can easily withdraw funds from Amazon, Stripe, and more in multiple currencies. And it connects to accounting softwares like Xero and QuickBooks. But Dan, what about security?
Well, as you know, every time you try and log in and take money out of the account without checking with us first, the security is amazing. They've got two-factor authentication, a 24/7 customer support team, and a fraud team working around the clock to keep Chris off our money. I could go on about all of the amazing features, but seriously, when you're a small company or even just starting one, there's already so much going on that having a payment service that's quick, easy, and, by the way, most importantly, reliable is just an absolute necessity. And for that reason, we use Wise. If you want to get on board, it's simple. Just head to wise.com/business to learn more about how Wise could work for your business.
I read somewhere, so, obviously the internet is the internet, but I understand you were going for an IPO at $700, $800 million, like that kind of range. There was also an equity financing round where you sold like a tiny bit of the company, and that would have put you at around a $2 billion range. And obviously in the meantime, you've also brought on like a mutual friend, Martha Lane Fox, as chair, right? And you've also got this sort of amazing claim at the right time in the market about being the world's biggest, most successful B Corp, which is
in tech.
In tech.
Yeah.
But that's also super interesting narratively at the time of doing all of this stuff. And then, of course, everything around success in business, annoyingly, is about timing. So it felt like everything was just on the cusp of perfection. The valuation, the tailwinds, the business you built, the people you were hiring. We hung out in LA. You'd opened up that LA office. You'd hired Martha Lane Fox, one of the OGs of tech in Europe. Just all of the things. So what happened?
Timing. I mean, everything. So I don't know if everything was going right, or if it was amazing as we now make it sound. But when you start the IPO process, I enjoy learning. So it's an incredible learning curve, right? Suddenly you're opening up yourself to the world naked, and you literally do just expose yourself. And banks start knocking on your door, and we had ranges going up to 3.5 million from $1 billion from certain banks. But deep down,
sorry, it ranges from 3.5 million to $1 billion.
No, sorry, to 3.5 billion to like 750 million. That was sort of the range. And in that courting process, it's fascinating to see how different people respond, and you'd be like, okay, I know what this business is worth. I know, and
what did you think the business was worth? Did you have a particular, more practical view of it, being English as well?
Yeah, I mean, so that probably is part of it too. But 750 million at that time was a fair valuation for the business. Everybody wanted the $1 billion because that puts you at unicorn status.
Yep.
And then suddenly, it's like platinum tier of British Airways, something. It's like I need to be in those seats. So that's what everyone was like pushing for. And
as if like 750 million is not good enough.
It's not though, to be a unicorn. You don't get unicorn status, and you won't get that free upgrade.
Would that get you there in dollars, or are we talking in dollars?
No, this is euros.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have been close.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's like the the sort of benchmarks. Everyone was pushing up north. But I think a fair number was 750. That was sort of at the time. But also, having done this business for a long time, and we had rejection after rejection between 2009 and 15, I knew how people received the company, particularly analysts, particularly the analysts that work for banks and for the bigger institutions. They look at us and go, file sharing business? File sharing is dead. Everyone knows that. No one's going to be sending files in the future. I'm like, okay, I've been hearing this since 2009. It's still okay, right? Email hasn't gone anywhere either. It's sort of pretty futile technology, really, but still very popular. The next thing would always be, okay, your advertising's weird. It's not programmatic. It's difficult. Advertising's dead. Okay, it's growing like 40% year on year, but
yeah, sure.
I guess
Facebook are doing all right. Thanks.
I guess if we're just doom mongering scenario here, then that's also dead. And they look at subscriptions and go, okay, yeah, subscription's quite interesting, but your churn's quite high, and it's really hard to compute how to value a business that's got two revenue models.
Yeah.
And what everybody wants is a comparable. And they would look at us and go, okay, so who are you? You're Dropbox. No, you're not quite Dropbox, are you? Because you've got this advertising thing. That's annoying. Advertising. Okay, so you're like Condé Nast. We're not quite Condé Nast because you've got the subscription thing. Cannot compute. So basically the computer would come back and say no, time and time again. It's just, it doesn't fit into a model, and particularly in Europe. So trying to IPO in Europe, you come up against a lot of naysayers, that I think are just not trained to go, okay, this is interesting. Let's find a different comparable, or let's take a percentage of one and a percentage of another and treat it differently. In this market, I'm talking about Britain, but I'm assuming we're all still sort of European. In this part of the world, that is a really difficult thing for people to get their head around, and they just don't like it. So I knew that the process going to the IPO was going to be difficult, as I'd experienced it so many times. And time again in the process, analysts would come back going, I'm not sure about this. And there's a massive difference, right? So if you're compared to Dropbox, the multiple is like 4. If you compare it as a software business to Adobe, it's like 20. So of course, you want to be pushing towards Adobe. And so given that, we were also trying to really leverage, the fact that we were in this creator economy and we were building tooling for creators and stuff like that, and recruiting in that space. And I just think there was a lot of pressure on the company to perform, and it was looking really good. And then, February last year, the market just stopped. It just suddenly, it was overheated. Everyone was trying to get out. They all got out. People panicked. No one was doing IPOs anymore. And then literally on the day we were going out, ended up pulling the plug. 18 months work down the drain. Millions of euros spent on, on the process, on bankers, on due diligence, on accountants. I mean, certain businesses you should still be in, they're always going to be good. Accountancy is definitely one of them. And we'd obviously had a lot of people employed that were specifically for that role, and we no longer needed them. So then you've got to go through the process of undoing it all. Okay, you can't go back out and IPO again in 3 months or 6 months. It's sort of a one-trick pony. You've got to wait, and the wait time, they say, is on average something between 3 and 5 years. Wow. If you look at the market today, there's still very few IPOs happening. I mean, Reddit is like one of the few that people have talked about, and that happened months ago.
Yeah.
So, in the last 18 months, whatever, has literally been very, very few. So you have no choice. If I've got investors that have got a fund that need to return money to their LPs and they've got to get out, an IPO isn't a path, and then you have to find a new path. And that new path is either going to be a strategic buy, selling to someone like Adobe or Squarespace. For us, that would have been sort of logical, or selling to private equity, or perhaps some other crazy construction like putting it up to Kickstarter and seeing if the community would buy into it, which would have been quite cool. But that didn't happen.
When it comes to the IPO, you said on the day that we were going to go out with our IPO, we canned it. How does a conversation like that happen at leadership level and with the team? Can you reflect on that day? Like what was going
miserably
through? Yeah. Was it one of the worst days of your life?
So for me, actually, my father-in-law died at the same time. And I always say to my wife that it's a blessing and a curse, because I've never been in the business to make money. It was never about making money. The IPO for me was a way of trying to secure the future of WeTransfer. And we'd set some things in place that I really was secure in the mind that, if I died, if
this company went at something, it would still be there in a few years, or 20 years, 50 years. And one of them was we created a foundation, and we set up that 1% of our revenue went to this foundation. And this was all in place. And I felt like, okay, if the market buys this company and they buy that we're a B Corp and they buy the foundation, everything else, and it's like, it's sort of locked. And still you've got to deal with Joe Public, but it's going to be relatively safe. And when that didn't happen, I was like, okay, I know what's coming next. This is a bummer. My father-in-law died. And it just put it into perspective. It was like, okay, my wife was crumbling. She had an amazing relationship with her dad. I could see, he was in hospital for a couple of months, so it was quite a bad period. But just perspective, it's like, okay, so this didn't happen, so what? There are bigger fish to fry. And I feel fortunate actually to have experienced that, so that I didn't drown in the misery of a failed IPO for 3 months, because it's not that important really.
But presumably that morning and that day, you probably woke up thinking this business is IPOing at billions, and then by the end of that day and that realization, you probably, because you're so experienced, probably knew that you had 6 to 12 months of hell coming.
That's what I'm trying to understand as well, right?
It's like
7 a.m. the company's potentially worth billions this day, and at the end of the day, it's like, actually, I've got a couple of years of hardcore pain. Like, how did,
because if
that 12 hours?
Yeah, the company's gone up by 100 odd staff. You're not going to make it to the IPO, then you know what you know. Then the next 6 months will be horrible.
I don't know what I am actually. Sometimes an optimist, sometimes a pessimist. And in this instance,
amber mist.
maybe in this instance, I'm always pessimistic, and always trying to at least keep 70% of the sort of energy and excitement of something happening back, because I've learned over the years, till the money's in the bank, you just don't know. And with the IPO, yeah, of course, you're looking at it going, okay, all right, I might be able to, buy a holiday house, something, that'd be nice. But it is it's the scariest, I think, in terms of like all deals that you can do, because you are, as I said, you're so exposed that you have so little control over so much of it that it's quite daunting, I think, going through that process. The thing that I guess was in the back of my mind too is that we'd seen the market, move a lot. And it was obvious that it was hot, and it was obvious that there was a chance that if we had gone out, it would have ended really badly. And had we gone out, it wouldn't have been pretty. The timing was appalling or great, depending on how optimism and pessimism flows through your body. But had we gone out, it would have meant that quite a lot of people lost money as opposed to making anything.
Do you think you made the right decision?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, again, long term, was it the right decision? Maybe not. For that moment, absolutely. And you don't know what the consequences would have been had we gone out, had the company been underwater. In that time period, I remember Made.com.
Yeah, blew up, yeah.
They went out. We weren't in that position, right? We're profitable.
Yeah, they're fundamentally quite a bad business, weren't they? They had Made. Yeah, sounds like you were the dream business. Alternatively, yeah.
Well, again, beauty of hindsight, we're a dream business today. So in 2015, 16, a company that was making profit and not going going to the wall at all costs and putting everything into the growth engine, they looked at us like we were just some lazy European hobbyists. What are you doing? Making money? Are you mental?
Why aren't you tripling every year?
These guys don't know how to run a business. They make profit.
Oh, and everybody that was coming into the company, I don't know how many titles I've had over the years, but quite a few. And everybody that was coming into the company would go, oh my God, you really do anything within performance. You're leaving so much cash on the table. It's ridiculous. And fast forward to today, it's like, oh yeah, okay. So the majority of the performance stuff that we've tried has failed because we're not a consumer business and selling sneakers. Yeah. We're something that's like, at some point in the near future, guys, you will have a file to send. Not today, but in the near future. So all I need to do is keep you somewhere up here. I'm building a brand so that you're at some point going to remember me.
Yeah. That's like the least threatening tech version of a Liam Neeson threat I've ever heard. At some point, you will need a file to send.
It's funny. It's funny because like culturally, I think that's a huge change in business, right? Like your philosophy there is like, or I suppose retrospectively, your philosophy is you can build amazing mid-sized businesses that are just beautiful businesses. Whereas the VC philosophy for the last 10 years has been pump at all costs and see if we can get one that goes to the top, and then if we don't, who cares? And it's kind of the same thing as we were talking before about like private equity. You create something beautiful and small and everyone loves it, and then you think, how do we make this beautiful small thing absolutely mass market, and then you destroy the thing that once gave it its beauty. And I think that's just the world over right now.
Yeah, and I mean it has been probably for the last 30 years, something like that. I feel like Richard Gere in Pretty Woman, was the beginning of this sort of momentum. But it's changing for sure. I really think that the conversation around dividends was like not been had in decades, and yet today I hear it. Maybe it's because I'm looking for it, but I hear it more and more from people saying, what's wrong with the dividend business? What's wrong actually with something that turns out profit and actually shares it and distributes it and looks after its employees? And in the history of commerce, even in America, you go back 70 years, and the annual report from a company like Chrysler, if you look into them, it proudly stated how they'd managed to increase salaries for employees, how much money they were making, and being able to provide education and healthcare for their employees, because their role wasn't just about maximum shareholder value return at all costs. It was really about, okay, we're creating jobs here and we're creating something.
It's like Costco, right? Same kind of model.
Waitrose, John Lewis, the brands that people talk about, with respect.
Yeah.
And that have been around for a long time and will be around for a long time.
Yeah. One of the things that WeTransfer has obviously given you is a really interesting, high quality creative platform. And one of the questions, probably the most frequent question I've ever had building Heights, is how the hell did you get Stephen Fry? And the answer to that question is you. You were one of my first investors. You were probably in the first 10, maybe 20 customers, full stop.
Wow.
Still use it.
I know. Yeah.
And my son.
Know far too much on Dutch import taxes because he like WhatsApps and tells me how I should do it better.
Well, you've sorted it now.
It's sorted now. Thank you for your feedback. But it's really interesting because Stephen Fry was one of the people that you casually know as you do, and were generous enough to make the intro, and it happened just with amazing timing. It was what he needed at that time, and he became our first official paying customer. Wow. And an amazing story, right? It's actually all through Damian. And the reason I'm bringing that up is actually, so Damian is one of the more understated people. We'd be terrible at this. We'd be telling everyone, all of our contacts, and showing off all the time. Damian just sort of casually does these. To be fair, you're right. It is mostly me. But Damian just casually knows these amazing people and does these amazing things because WeTransfer is a loved brand, which is really cool. I remember messaging you a few years ago. And like, what are you up to? Like, when you're back in London, let's catch up. And you're like, I'm just at the Oscars. I was like, what? You're like, send me a photo through of you with an Oscar in your hand and I think a cocktail glass in the other one. I was like, what is going on?
So casual.
It's an epic story. Before we get into like any exit chat or anything, can you share how Damian Bradfield won an Oscar?
I didn't win an Oscar.
All right, there we go with the modesty. Come on. How did WeTransfer win an Oscar?
I didn't even know brands could win Oscars.
Oh, no. It's amazing.
No. So we didn't. We facilitated an Oscar.
Dan and I have started over a dozen companies between us, so we know how this goes. You're starting up, you're scaling, ideas are flowing, you're making plans, and you're really getting caught up in the bigger picture. This is when the fine details can find themselves overlooked. I'm talking about security and compliance.
Now, before you roll your eyes and reach for that skip button, hear us out. This isn't your grandpa's boring lecturer on following rules. This is about building trust, and in the digital world, trust is the new currency. Here's the thing. You don't have to go through this nightmare if you use Vanta.
Vanta is like having a compliance guru, a risk management wizard, and a trust-building ninja all rolled into one sleek AI-powered package. They automate the hell out of compliance for SOC 2 and ISO 27001. Say it with me.
ISO 27001.
All jokes aside, I've experienced this myself with my company Lottie. We weren't allowed to pitch one of the biggest companies in the country because we didn't have our ISO 27001 certification in place. And so this is a serious thing.
If only you'd have had Vanta, mate. Vanta doesn't just tick boxes, it builds trust. And in business, trust is everything. That's why Chris couldn't get that deal through. It's the difference between a prospect saying, maybe later, and shut up and take my money. With Vanta, you're not just complying, you're showing the world you've got your stuff together. Over 8,000 companies already use Vanta. Whether you're a scrappy startup or you're scaling, Vanta's got your back.
Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds great, but I bet it costs an arm and a leg. Well, if you head over to vanta.com/secret leaders right now, you'll get $1,000 off. So give Vanta a shot and join the ranks of businesses that are building trust faster than you can say SOC 2 compliance. Trust me, your future self and your stress levels will thank you.
And in the same way that we've facilitated your relationship with Stephen Fry, and I think that's what we've been good at. That's what we understand really well. We enable stuff. And it sounds really basic, but a file sharing business basically is about sending something from A to B. And we've been really good at just facilitating that transfer of ideas or that transfer of physical or a digital good. The reason we know Stephen is because we had these beautiful images or blank space at the back of WeTransfer. And, I'm British, grew up reading Penguin books. I was like, okay, we've got space to fill. Why don't we give some of it to Penguin and we'll promote some of the new titles coming up? And I thought it was going to be dead simple. I just reach out to Penguin. They'll say, yes, it's free advertising. And we did. I went down to a random house, Penguin random house, met up with the team. They were like, yes, I'd love to do that. And I just said, so give me some images then, and we'll run them on WeTransfer and we'll just help sell books. And they did, but all books are portrait. So all the images they give me were portrait images. So we spent fucking months reshooting all of these covers of these books. So whatever the title was, we would create a landscape image, but then being somewhat perfectionist, we would put it in the setting and context of the book. So Penguin were like obviously blown out of their mind because we were doing all this for free. We weren't getting paid. We're actually spending money on doing this stuff for no reason other than to drive traffic to Penguin.
Yeah.
And somehow it got to Stephen's team, who went, could you do the same for Stephen Fry? I'm like, of course. What do you want to do? And Stephen had a new book coming out. So we basically just got behind it exactly the same thing, went over the top on helping push his new book, ended up at a book launch with him. And it turned out he was a massive WeTransfer fan already and loved the product. And that was like the story of WeTransfer. So many people we would want to work with turned out to already use the service, unbeknownst to us. And particularly from the music industry. So I'm getting to the Oscar. It's a very long-winded story. The Oscar comes about because years ago, and I want to give credit to the people that have helped us, because I always think there's some few people that you meet in your life that are very generous with their network. I feel like I'm generous with my network. But those people that are equally generous, I will bank them forever. And this guy, Harris Elliott, who's a sort of stylist, curator based here in London, I knew for a long time he was styling Mark Ronson and Gorillaz and Jamie Hewlett. And he introduced us to 11 Management. And 11 Management was Gorillaz and Jamie Hewlett's Spoke Matambo's management team. And we did some stuff with Gorillaz over the years. And 11 Management also managed this guy called Riz Ahmed, who's a spoken word poet and a musician, but also an actor. And fast forward like 10 years or something, Riz's team reaches out to us and says, Riz got an idea for a film. It's about racism in post-Brexit Britain. And again, this is like pre-COVID. Yeah, pre-COVID.
You know, England's not doing very well. There's an awful lot of tension here. Not that it's that much better today, but it's still pretty tense. And he said, you know, would you be interested in helping pull this film together? And we're like, Riz Ahmed, of course. What should we do? I've got to shoot it this weekend. Can we get it going? We're like, yes. And I love this shit. So anybody that basically asks me something impossible, it's like, okay, let's see if we can go out. I know that if you go above and beyond, and if you really go out of your way, you get it back. So that's what we did. We put the money up for the film. We basically helped Riz pull it all together. We then helped on the campaign, because it's a real campaign to get an Oscar. I mean, you win an award somewhere else, but then you've got to go and submit it to all these different award. You've got to turn up at these certain lunches in LA. So we facilitated all of that, and lo and behold, ended up winning an Oscar. But it's, to be clear, it's Riz and Anil that won the Oscar. We just did it under the guise of WeTransfer and WePresent, and it runs on WePresent. And to this day, it's, if you haven't watched it, it's a very intense 10 minutes.
Very.
Very intense, but it's beautiful, and it's the best. In my opinion, it's like the best of Riz, because it's him doing spoken word, him acting beautifully. It's his casting, it's his production, and you can just feel this energy coming out of him. Yeah, it's one of the best things we've ever produced.
Moving on to modern day. So a couple of months ago, I messaged you. I'm like, do you want to hang out in London? When are you back? As I do. You're like, yep, I'm coming. Sounds good. I was like, great. Started a new podcast with Chris, actually, like redoing Secret Leaders. Would love to get you on. Like, great. That sounds good. Actually just about to go through an exit process. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then almost immediately, you're like, it's done. The exit is done. And when I'd spoken to you...
Well, you texted me and said, can you talk? And I was like, yeah, what now? And then you didn't expect me to call you, and I love calling people when they just say...
Yeah, that's how you know that he's almost 50. He's one of those people that fucking calls you when you WhatsApp people.
That's so weird.
Oh God.
It's so weird.
And
We're
Dan is
definitely
so much younger than
millennials.
me.
Yeah.
It's so annoying.
It's actually funny how, like, that is, like, so weird.
It's such a generational thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because as soon as he called me, I was like, why do you do this?
Yeah, if
Just
someone calls
WhatsApp me
I'm like,
back.
please don't.
I love it, though. I
He
think
does, yeah. And the more you tell someone it winds you up, the more they're likely to do it
Yeah,
as well. So he just
definitely.
always loves the call. But you'd already exited, and it was the fastest thing ever. So you said 6 weeks from start to finish.
I was in my local Chinese restaurant getting a spring roll. And
You can afford 2 now.
maybe. I'll think about that next time.
Depends how well it went.
But yeah, no, it's the fastest deal of all time. I mean, I'm saying that like I've got statistics
Could be,
to
though.
back it up, but
Could be.
I've certainly...
I suppose I have less context, right? So we tried to IPO, that we didn't get there in the end, and so from that period to the exit, how long were we talking?
We basically had a conversation and said, okay, there's a horizon. There's going to have to be a deal of some sort. I mean, there's obviously different flavors that can happen, but...
And that's with your
Yeah,
VCs,
there's
right?
the investment company.
The board, management team. I was like, yeah, okay, there has to be an acquisition or an exit of some sort. And sort of casually at a dinner, actually, one of the VCs said, what do you think of this company, Bending Spoons? I was like, don't know them, never heard of them. So, but they might be interested. I'll have a chat with them. And that was like casually sort of thrown the table, like, as in, what do you think of that girl? It's all right. And then the process seemingly had already started.
Wow.
So they seemingly had already started doing due diligence and had commissioned McKinsey, who were doing some research on us. And basically within a space of 6 weeks, it went from, hey, they might, maybe there's someone that's interested in dating you, to, you've been sold.
How much of a say did you get in that process?
Very little.
Yeah.
Very little.
Like, are you able to say no and they're like, okay, I understand your objection, but we're doing it anyway? Or is it like...
I mean, that's a very common conversation.
Huh?
That's a very common conversation in our company.
Yeah, fair.
I mean, that's a very common conversation in any company that's heavily invested in.
Yeah.
You say, we don't want to do this. They go, thanks for your opinion. We'll be cracking ahead, but can you communicate to the team?
Yeah, and I mean, fortuitously for the acquirers,
an awful lot of homework had already been done. I mean, if you're preparing for an IPO, you're in tip-top condition. Like, you can't, there's nothing being scraped under the carpet and, buried away that somebody may not find out. If you're going to IPO, then you're in really good shape.
Yeah.
Or at least
Unless
everything
you're a crypto company. Because a lot of those made it.
or buried in some sort of SPAC.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
If you're going onto the Amsterdam Stock Exchange and you're going to bear everything, it doesn't all have to be pretty, but it's going to be pretty transparent.
Right.
So we were in really good shape. So they didn't, we could basically just go, "Look, all right, here's the folder of everything you need to know, and you can get on with it." So it was locked and loaded in 6 weeks.
I mean, if anyone can deliver a comprehensive folder with all the data in it, it'd be you.
You'd hope.
True.
Yeah. So you'd hope. Yeah, it'd be really off-brand. Really off-brand if you fuck that up.
Yeah.
So the conversation that didn't happen 6 weeks later.
I think it will happen on Dropbox too, by the way.
No. That's just insulting. That's just rude.
It always does, actually. When it comes to financials, it's always like DocSend or...
Really?
Yeah, I think so,
Just
yeah.
to fuck you off? Just to trigger you?
I don't know. Maybe just to rub it in. It's like, there's still plenty of room for you guys to improve. You guys should get corporate.
Just to... One of the things, the comparisons, I just like to say, as you've said this, isn't like DocSend or DocuSign, there's a multi-billion-dollar company, and every time you use their product, you're like, is this it? It's insane. And yet, on the other side, you've obviously got the WeTransfers, where like beautiful brands, so many users, all that kind of stuff, and like sort of struggling to tell the same story, maybe because more of a consumer product potentially than B2B.
Yeah, I mean, our users are mainly, small creatives, freelancers, agencies. We don't really have a corporate offering. I don't know what DocuSign costs, but it's probably like minimum $100 a month or something like that. I don't know. It works, right? I mean, you guys probably use it. We use it all the time.
I've got a question for you. Who the fuck are Bending Spoons?
Have you not Googled them and done any research?
We don't do research.
We've got a team of like 100 people.
I genuinely know so little about them.
Yeah.
I wasn't briefed by Jay. Jay should have briefed me.
God damn it, Jay. Jay, who's Bending Spoons?
An Italian technology company founded in 2013.
Good. Wow. Well, you're really selling it. Jesus. Excellent. Okay.
Is that what you really Googled, Jay?
That's what it came up,
Oh, yeah. Are you doing it right now, real time? Oh, nice. Is that ChatGPT or Google?
That's just my own research on Google.
Yeah.
ChatGPT secret leaders. How many listeners you got a month?
We don't talk about that right now. We're talking to you.
We're in a
Oh.
transition right now.
We're talking to you about Bending Spoons.
Oh, okay, all right. Well,
How would you describe Bending Spoons? As in, like, what are they known for? Like, to me, like WeTransfers, super famous brand. And I'll say, like, is Bending Spoons a holding company with other brands in it, or what's the vibe?
So I hadn't heard of Bending Spoons either until it was casually thrown on the table at this dinner. It's an Italian company. I mean, seemingly well respected in Italy. They've been around quite a long time, building some products, but mostly acquiring products. I guess, I mean, I'm an agency guy, right? So in the scheme of things, it's a bit like WPP. It's a company that acquires brands, companies in and around the sort of creative producer space. They quite impressively actually. Luca, who's the CEO, in between getting married and going on his honeymoon, acquired Issue and WeTransfer. And
so cash.
I mean, to be fair, it sounds like a sick operator. That's amazing. Yeah, of course, yeah. I do remember Issue.
So I mean, in the space of 2 weeks, closed 2 deals. I mean, pretty impressive. And prior to that, they'd acquired Evernote, and prior to that, they'd acquired an AI tool, which...
So actually building up quite a cool portfolio, to be fair. These aren't, these are actually interesting internet businesses together, like when put together.
I mean, I haven't used Issue for a long time, but there was a period where it was sort of like the publishing platform of the internet.
For sure.
If you were going to be Condé Nast and you're going to have a digital magazine, you'd probably push it out on Issue too.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything about them. I don't know any of the financials, but it was quite iconic, I guess, at the time. Evernote the same.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Evernote definitely iconic.
Yeah, you guys would have used
and
it.
And WeTransfers iconic. That's kind of what I mean. I guess Italian, right? They've got good taste.
They're buying proper brands.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't know much about them.
I still, to be frank, I don't know much about them either. Our relationship is very fresh and new, and I'm learning, on a daily basis what it is that they want and what they plan to do. My hope is that, as you say, WeTransfer is an iconic brand. My hope is that they respect it and build it, and continue to sort of keep its place in internet history. I think it's got a place. I love looking back on the Wayback Machine and seeing WeTransfer in like 2010 and 2012. It's quite cool.
Obviously, like the exit process being so fast, you say you don't have that much say in the matter, etc. Like no say? It's like votes, so kind of
There's no vote.
It just happens.
Well, I suppose context is important, right? For that to be the case, your ownership must have been a certain level.
Yeah.
The investors' ownership must have been a certain level.
Exactly. So Highland was the majority owner.
Right.
And as these things go, you have drag and tag clauses.
Yeah, of course.
I guess we could have gone through the sort of formal process of who's in favour, who's not.
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
It was very clear what was wanted, and these guys were willing to pay what everyone was looking for. So
yeah, and I presume for Highland it is as simple as, did we make X on our money? If we do, we're out.
I mean, Highland has done very well from it as a VC shop. I think they've done really well. I think they've had some really big exits in the last few years, and they've gone on to launch, a really big fund. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. So they have a really good track record, and I think for them, WeTransfer is a really good exit.
How do you feel about it then?
What, Highland, the exit?
No, yeah. How do you feel about the exit, both financially and emotionally?
Well, it's still very raw, right? So I'm doing this in real time.
So it's just happened.
Yeah. So I'm processing and talking and processing at the same time. So what you asked me this week was very different last week, and it'll probably be different next week. I'm resided to the conclusion that we've arrived at. As in, I knew this was going to happen. I knew this is what it was going to be. I would have loved for it to be different. And I'm sad to some degree that, it's the end of a road. But I've also done it 15 years, and I've had struggles with it in the past. It hasn't always been easy. Certainly the last couple of years has been quite stressful. And maybe it was time for me to move on anyway. There's a certain point, and this is contradictory to where we started, but there's a certain point in the company that you do hear yourself saying, "Oh, we've done all that. We've done that before. We tried that already. That didn't work out." And I can hear myself sort of sounding like that old curmudgeon in the corners, like, that's not going to work. Is it? Look at these young kids trying to do what we did before. You don't want to be in that position where you're just slightly, old.
Jaded.
Yeah, old and a bit irritated, and sometimes I could hear myself being that person.
So irritating yourself.
Sometimes, yeah, and many people around me. But then, I hadn't finished. So I don't know if you ever finish, but I certainly felt like I wasn't finished. So there were still plenty of things on the list to make this thing bigger and better. And to, we have many moving parts. We present is this arts platform that's loved by many, but still not known by many. I would have loved to have seen that, heavily integrated and really like built into WeTransfer. As you said, we're one of the world's biggest B Corps in tech. Most people don't know that, and I really think in terms of the service, we could have done a lot to, add value to the experience and do good for the planet at the same time without having to ask people to pay to do it, but just doing it by encouraging people to delete files, reducing server emissions, that sort of thing. So there are loads of things that I would like to have done, but if I'd been doing it 70 years, maybe I'd still be saying that. So who knows? So yeah, I'm in a bit of a discovery phase, and the company is going to go through a lot of change, and that's also quite hard to witness. So it's very mixed feelings.
Most founders, when they exit their company, well, we were discussing this. Not necessarily most, but we definitely talked about the fact that a lot of founders would like to leave their company once they exit it. Like realistically, it's just going to be super painful, super challenging. You're now working for someone, you're not necessarily aligned. The whole earn out thing feels like breadcrumbs and begging for your cash kind of thing. What was your situation?
I mean, super mixed. So if I think back, actually, I resigned halfway through the process. I got so annoyed that I resigned.
Through the sale process.
Yeah, and then I asked to pull my resignment back, and then I wanted to stay on, and then I sort of wanted them to fire me, and then when they did actually fire me, I then negotiated to stay longer. I mean, it's.
Oh, you've been on a journey.
Yeah.
No, it's my life, right? I mean, it's become such a big part of who I am, and my friends, my business relationships, everything is, if I'm meeting people and they're looking at me going, can we do something together? And I'm like, yes, but not as WeTransfer anymore. And that's weird. That's a really weird conversation to be having. So yeah, it has been a real journey. But in the end, I decided that I wanted to stay on because I knew the company was going to go through quite a lot of change. And there's an awful lot of people that I employed, an awful lot of people that are part of the company because of me and because of what I stand for and what I believe the company stands for. And I want to try and finish some of that stuff, good or bad. Some people will get laid off. Yeah, then I think I owe it to them to explain to them what happened and
look them in the eyes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wrote a big note this weekend, and what I wrote is some people are being let go by bending spoons. And I said, you might be annoyed at bending spoons. You might be angry with them for what you see them doing to the company, but in my opinion, you should be angry with me. We set this ship sailing this course a few years ago, and it was the decision that we made in 2015 when we took investment that set this course. Yeah. I wish it could have turned out differently. It didn't, but it's not the fault of bending spoons that this is going to happen. Probably, if we hadn't sold, we'd probably be doing something similar ourselves because we'd have to reset the business.
Yeah. It's like a necessary evil at that point,
so if you want to be angry at me, but if you are being let go, be proud of what you produce, because we paid off LA County's medical debt. We created a fund that has changed the lives of thousands of artists. We've launched careers of thousands of artists. We've done a lot of good. You should be proud of that. And I think anybody who's got a CV coming out of our company has gone on to work for some pretty good places. I lost some great people to like Airbnb and other, and I was quite proud of that. I was like, okay, I respect Airbnb. You went from WeTransfer to there. Wow,
amazing.
This is like a little stupid file sharing company, and you went on to go and work there. It's great. So I want to sort of see this phase through too, and it's not nice. I mean, I feel like I'm in the trenches, but I think it's my job.
So that's emotionally. What about financially? Does your life change? Like, how do you view that stuff? Because it is different, right?
I don't think my life changes, and if anything, I'm trying not to start something again. But
how long does that last?
No, I just came from a meeting where I'm like super pumped up about something that I think I'm going to start as soon as I can.
I would just say, for what it's worth, and obviously like very different, exits and so forth. But I sold my company, had a really bad experience with the acquirer and all the rest of it, and I wanted to get out as quick as physically possible. And I rolled into my next business at the same time as leaving, and it is solely my biggest regret I have, because I feel like you're in a rush to capitalize on your, the halo effect of like who have you been and whatever, but before you know it, you'll go from like one full-time job to another, because people like you will have your next thing up and running like that, and everyone want to be involved and all the rest of it. But taking 6 months out without a phone would very rarely ever happen. So if you can.
Yeah, I won't. And I mean,
part of this is that even this conversation now is part of the process for me. So I'm trying to stay in it. I don't want to run away because I do think then I'll lock myself in a box and I'll get a little bit depressed, and I'll start blaming myself for having not done it differently, whatever else. I feel like actually, and this is a journey again. So if you'd asked me this last week, I'd have gone, no, I'm out of here, man. My son's in Argentina. I'm going to go and stay with him. He won't want it, but I'm going there anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's listening, being like, don't do that, Dad. Yeah. Wait a week, see how you feel.
Well, he's lucky. So I waited a week and now I feel like I should be in the trenches.
Yeah, exactly.
So, no, I'm not going to rush into something and start something next week. And to some degree, actually, locking me into January is quite useful because I sort of have to see this through and put closure on it and then do something else. But it is a very emotional journey that I didn't actually expect. I knew this day was coming. And again, reflecting on my father-in-law's death, I always say, I don't know how I'd deal with it if my dad died. And my wife always says, you know it's coming, but actually the way you deal with it, you'll never know. You can't prepare yourself for how you deal with it and all the complexities around it. And this has become so much of a part of my life that I think I'm unpacking it daily, and probably will continue to do so for the next few months.
How much of you staying until January, your answer to Chris just now on, no, I'm just going to roll straight into the next thing, of course I am. How much of that is fear of ego and identity, right? Fear of how other people present, how you present to the world and how you feel other people are going to think of you the moment you're not Damian from WeTransfer?
Yeah, I don't know is the honest answer. I think a lot. I have quite a lot of power. And I don't mean that in a way that I can fire people when I want or something. What I mean is...
You can send them files they don't want.
I could do. But more that if you discover somebody that's really exciting as a young artist, I can really put a spotlight on them and change their career. That's that's gold for me.
It's like God to them.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, no, and it's quite, that is quite addictive.
For sure.
Quite compelling.
Being viewed that way as well, yeah.
So I don't necessarily like being in the spotlight. Doing a stupid podcast show in the spotlight, so maybe it's completely contradictory.
Great podcast.
A beautiful podcast. Stupid in that saying this and doing this at the same time obviously is contradictory, but I'm a contrarian by nature. The ability to be able to help someone, I think, is really beautiful. And I think with our business, we've been able to help so many people. It's addictive power. The one major clause that I had in the deal was that we have this foundation, the Sporting Act, and I wanted to ensure that I could remain chairman and that they would continue to fund it. So they made a commitment that they'd put $3 million in the next 2 years into the foundation to keep it alive. That foundation now enables me to still continue to do some of that good work. I can still help someone. I can still help, change their lives or start a career path. So I've managed to retain some of that power, which I guess solves some of my ego issue. But if I take the ego side aside, the going through WeTransfer, starting it as just a file sharing business, learning how we could use the media and the service to help change people's lives, starting the foundation, being able to give away money unconditionally to artists and seeing them thrive is what I've realized what I want to do. So when I say I'm going to jump into something next, it's an extension of what I'm already doing, and it will be an extension of that mindset as opposed to necessarily a business. I definitely will not be getting into a venture-backed business again.
It's interesting. We were talking about before that if Sequoia invests in a company, they will fire in 18 months 45% of their CEOs. And I think it's like a great chance to ask someone who's built a company that's, at one point was worth billions, like, what advice would you be giving yourself? you know, what advice would you be telling you in 2015, you know, a small, you know, not internationally famous company that was making profit and growing at a good rate? What would you be saying?
I used to have a driver. This sounds very glamorous, but he was a taxi driver, but he had quite a nice car, so we used him all the time. And he lived in Almere, which is like Croydon in the UK, but Almere outside Amsterdam. He had a lovely Mercedes S-Class and, like, you know, reclining seats and everything. So getting his taxi was like a real treat to the airport or something. One car, one driver, one house in Almere, and one white Valentino sofa. So proud. And I'd say to him, man, you're like the greatest taxi driver ever. If he couldn't turn up, he'd just call a friend and he'd pick you up instead. But he wasn't taking commission off it or anything, and he wasn't trying to build a taxi empire. He was just helping you out because he couldn't be there, but he wanted a trusted friend to pick you up because you're a good client. And I remember looking at him going, man, you're leaving so much money on the table. There's such an opportunity here. And he's like, no, I have a white Valentino sofa at home. You know, this is a big ticket item. I go on holiday 3 weeks a year to Spain in a caravan with my whole family, and I pay for all of it. I have this great house in Almere, just content. And I struggled massively with this idea of being content, of having enough, of, you know, not wanting to go to the next level and everything else. And I still struggle with it, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't aspire for anything else. But I think to surround yourself and to work with people that understand what good is and what enough is really important. And to not have, I think there needs to be balance. So it's handy if you have somebody who's got an ego the size of the Watford Gap, but you don't want to have 10 people in your team that have got that big an ego. So to surround yourself with people that are able to balance it out, and make sure that things are, you know, staying real, because if you do make a whole load of money and you exit, and you're still in that mindset of, you know, needing more, there will never ever be enough.
There's never a number.
And so you're always in this cycle of somewhat misery. And again, this is an age thing too, right? And people will say, well, you can say that because you've already made money, and, you know, this is the conversation that sort of goes around the houses. But I do think there will come a point in the very near future where it's absolutely okay to go, you know, I make X amount of money, I take this much profit out of the company, we employ this many people, we're doing this much good, and we're all happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there will be, you know, the world is cyclical, there's a pendulum always moving from one extreme to another. That will come back. And I hope to Christ it does, because, again, as I said when I walked in here, this environment that we're living in today, where my favorite local restaurant is something that suddenly booms because of TikTok, and it's suddenly invested in and is franchised out, and the owner then sells out and leaves, and it becomes generic and a sort of Jamie's or Leon, and is no longer my local favorite restaurant, is a tragedy.
Yeah.
Because we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. Let's make sure our local restaurant stays a great local restaurant and work out the mechanics around how we can make it interesting for the people that work there and the owner or whatever else, to keep it so that it's great, and be proud that it's okay to have one restaurant and make it a banger restaurant that everyone wants to go to, and not sell out, making it available at every duty-free center around the world. It's not appealing. It's not what we want. Scarcity is what we want, but yet we all know it, but somehow give it up so readily. That has to change.
So you've just mentioned this beautiful concept of scarcity, restaurants, the scarcity, etc. One of the things that I've learned from you throughout the journey is brand. I think anyone who's interacted with WeTransfer has absorbed like a cultural fascination and interest for the way that you've approached brand. Realistically, as you've said, just a file transfer site at the end of the day, but it's a big brand, right? It really just is. The brand is kind of everything with you guys. So it'd be remiss of me not to ask you for some tips on brand. I'm building a consumer brand. Like, everything is a brand, ultimately. What would be your top tips? Like, how do we build great brands today?
You don't need tips. You've got it.
It's very kind. All right, interview over. He said exactly what I needed him to hear. No, I'm proud. I'm proud of Heights as a brand as
good.
well. But I want it to be great. So thanks for saying it's good on camera. How do I make it great? How do people make great brands?
It is good. I'm not putting feathers up your arse. I think you have. I mean, I think the packaging is really good. I think
No. I'm not genuinely asking for Heights. I want your
ad. I'm sitting in an ad.
I genuinely
I'm just
want
processing it, and I'm going, right, why is it that I actually
you're-
like it? Because I'm quite loyal, regardless of you.
Yeah. You
I'm
are
quite loyal to it, and it's easy with a tactile, physical product. It's really hard if it's just online. That's where I'm going to give WeTransfer massive kudos, because if I send you something like a Heights package, you can put everything into the design and the touch and feel and the packaging and unpackaging experience and all that sort of stuff. So it's sort of easier to build a relationship. If it's pure digital, it's really hard. And if you look at WeTransfer, I mean, go to the site, 95% of the site belongs to someone else. It's an ad for Louis Vuitton, or it's an ad for Richemont or something. What we have, in actual fact, is about that much and a couple of bits across the top. So what we did is quite remarkable, and it is the brand, but it's mostly the relationships. So that the way that we interact with people, the generosity that we've given, I think is this spoken word marketing campaign. The base has been going for 15 years. That it has created this incredible amount of trust and generosity towards us that I'm super proud of. It's really difficult to create.
But if I'm a new founder today and I want to start a brand, what are the tips? I come to you for some advice. What are the things that you would impart upon me so I can do this right?
So caveat that when we started, it was easy. So, we had a very, very easy runway to building up some success. The marketplace is so different today. But if I look at brands that I think are doing really well, they're doing it always in a non-conformist manner. So none of them are doing the playbook because the playbook is so obvious. And unfortunately, because even of the notion of the playbook, it's shared by everyone and read by everyone. So unless you're operating at fucking light speed, you're behind the curve. The only way you can really stick out today is by being non-conformist. You have to take your time, take a step back, look what everyone else is doing, and then try to do it differently. We have this conversation about brand the whole time, and if I think of what are the true great brands of the world, they're ancient. They're like Coca-Cola, and they're no longer related or tied or connected to any one individual. These have gone so long that they stand alone on their own because of the way they conducted themselves, the way that they've appeared in media and social media, whatever. A brand today isn't a brand yet. So if you're starting a company today, you are the brand. You, the individual, the founder, the team, the 20 employees, 50 employees, you are the brand. The way that you conduct yourselves, the way that you act, the way that you talk, the culture that you create, that's the brand. It's not a logo and it's not anything else around it. It's you. So if you want to build a great brand, you have to live it, breathe it, do it, make it, talk about it, show up in exactly the way you want it to be. And you have to do it with consistency all the time. And if that breaks, if you decide that you're going to flip and try something else because you've read a playbook from someone else about how to quickly acquire 1 million customers with just 10 million quid, you're screwed. It's going to go wrong. And I think when we first started, we were seeing companies start, raise, and sell in like 3 years. That's not happening anymore. I mean, you could have done that. It was not a great brand. It's never going to be a great business, but you could have flipped a business like you could flip a house. It takes 10 years to build a company. It takes way more to build a brand. And I think you've got to live it yourself and be willing to put yourself into it. And people buy you, or they buy Steve Jobs, they buy Apple. They're buying those individuals that represent the values that people can associate with. And that's, I think, grossly underestimated. And it's not for everybody. I learned to do this. I didn't like to do it in the beginning, but I learned to do this, to talk about it, to talk about the brand. An awful lot of young startups, founders, artists don't want to do it. They find it really difficult. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable. You don't want to be in the limelight and talking about this stuff. Okay, then you've got to find some other way of doing it, because if you're not, it's nearly impossible.
One of the biggest challenges I've actually had growing Heights is exactly the dichotomy you just said of performance and brand. And you do need to try new things. You need to get new customers. You need to be out there and testing new things, because not everything works. And at the same time, you have this desire to maintain this concept of what a brand is and the consistency. And it's amazing advice I got from someone. I wish I could remember who it was, but they said, an example of a great brand, how you know you're building a great brand, is your marketing team are really bored. They're bored of doing the same thing over and over again. They're bored of the similarities, the monotony of their weeks and days and months. If you're always doing new stuff every single week, you're not building a proper brand. So you need your marketing team and yourself to feel a little bit bored. And if you feel that way, you're probably building something consistent over a long period of time that will outlast the guys that are doing new stuff all the time. And I was like, that is exceptionally profound and really interesting framing for the challenge of building a brand.
You're welcome. No, it wasn't me.
Are your team
Would have
bored?
been the deepest thing you've ever said, for sure, yeah.
Ooh. Are your team bored then?
What do you think? What do you think of that, though? Would you agree with that?
No.
Really? Go on. Give the other case.
So I mean, I never gave our team a minute to be bored. We were constantly changing. I think if you ask our team, they would say that they were never doing the same thing for more than about 30 seconds.
But how do you square that concept with what you've just said, which is it's all about consistency?
Because I think there's some consistency in being non-conformist. So, I mean, I've got an attention span of about 30 minutes. I think that's reflected in a lot of the work that we do. We can flip between doing something that's about the golden record going up into space and homelessness in LA. And I can very comfortably justify how we can live, on that spectrum. And I just think it's what's sort of accepted and expected from the brand. If that's who you are, then it's fine. Fashion. I mean, you mentioned fashion earlier on, and I've learned a lot from luxury. I started out working for Stella McCartney, really like back office crap work, but I was watching this brand being built, and in the world of fashion, a collection is changed every 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Creative directors come and go. There's this drive to constantly renew the brand and reinvigorate it and be on brand, on trend, and pushing this thing, yet retaining something that underlines what the company stands for, or what the ethics and everything were. And in Stella's world, it was basically vegan, no leather, quality. I don't know what the values would have been, but they're still there today. Yet I'm sure the collection, I know the collection looks nothing like it did when it came out in 1998 or whenever it was that we were working there.
So there's that consistency around the values, the broader stuff, and then within there have the flexibility to change and create.
And surprise, I think, we touched on scarcity earlier on, but it's the world of fashion. It has some staples, but every year there's got to be something new that creates that desirability and a certain amount of scarcity to get people to go, oh my God, did you see that? Did you do that? Mischief, that's New York Collective.
Love them.
Why do you love them?
Surprise.
Do
you know them, Mischief?
No.
Oh, they're great. We've got to do an episode on them. They're like, just everything they do is completely new from the last one.
I honestly thought when he said that he was talking about the brand being a bit naughty, as in your own brand, like a bit of mischief.
No, we
like a very David Brent.
Mischief. Where's he going with this?
No, I would have loved to have done what Mischief done.
Yeah, me
have
too.
done.
I said that to my wife. If I wasn't running Heights, like one of the brands, what other brands I'd love to do, or whatever, I wish I was the founder of Mischief. Like,
so
cool.
I can introduce you to Gabe. It's a company based in
love to get him
Brooklyn.
on.
It's
Yeah,
a collective
sounds
of
right.
like 20 people in its garage in Brooklyn, and basically they just mess with you. They will produce something, and it started off with these Jesus creepers, so shoes that were basically was it Jesus creepers? I can't remember, but it's they'll take a shoe, a product, and they'll twist it, and then create a limited run, and then basically put it online for people to purchase, and it will sell out.
So,
Let's do it.
to wrap up,
Yes.
I know we talked a little bit about, the exit process. It's always interesting. As a founder, you hear other people's stories. There is an aspect to it's interesting. How much did the company sell for in the end? How do people do, etc. You're very British, so obviously that's uncouth, and you don't find that particularly interesting. So I knew that you weren't going to be really into actually talking about it. So I prepared a nice little visual prop for you. This is my WeTransfer. Oh God, I've broken it. But anyway, we'll just keep it like this. This is my WeTransfer sale board.
Beautiful.
Hope you really like it.
Yeah.
Made it nice and colourful. So nice one to camera there.
We had this thing at one point where I was trying to get a trademark for WeTransfer, but you couldn't, because we were young and the company was immature. You couldn't trademark a verb, so they wouldn't allow us to trademark WeTransfer. So I tried to convince them the company was called WeTransfer. And it was just down to intonation. So you're looking at it wrong. It's not called WeTransfer. It's called
WeTransfer. Okay, well,
Wow.
I thought we could work out how much.
Do the value of WeTransfer.
Yeah. How much did we exit WeTransfer for? So I think we're going to just stick. We're going to start with a nice cold number here.
Fixed expression.
What am I supposed to do? Go.
It's a more or
Are we
less
hot?
kind of situation. So if you're listening right now, we've got a board up, and the current number that we're suggesting here is we're starting off at a cold 10 million. So a low number, but I feel looking at your face, that's an insulting suggestion. So I thought what we could do is split the difference. We'll move a comma along, and we'll just stick another
100.
zero at the end. How are we looking on the 100,000
You have
mark?
to move your
100 million?
commas a bit.
There you go. So 100 million mark. How we feeling?
And what's that for? What they paid for WeTransfer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Comfortable?
Did you just subtly tell us that you got 100 million?
Well, we can't tell, can
No.
we? Yeah,
No.
casual.
Am I not allowed? I'm not.
100 million. That attitude made me feel like we're underselling this a little bit.
You might be.
Another
We're
zero.
underselling it a little bit. How about
Is
we'll
it?
change the first number. We'll stick a 3. We'll stick a 3 here. How does 300 million kind of resonate?
I mean, that would be okay.
Yeah, we're comfortable in the
No,
region. We think
He's
that's
downplaying it.
yeah. Well, yeah, he is, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like.
I'm getting a vibe. I
he
tell you
wants
what,
the
I'm getting a
conversation
vibe
to
that it's
end.
about 400. That's the vibe I'm
Million?
getting. Yeah, 400 million. That's the vibe I'm getting. What vibe are you getting?
more.
Ah, interesting.
I'm not allowed to say exactly which number it is. So
No, you're not allowed to say exactly. We're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. But this is a sort of. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we're saying it's
Is that what I did then? I was
a little bit.
I'm in an
you're le-
auction.
No, I
you're
feel like
le-
Dan did
I'm
that.
going to make sure that I don't have any
you
head
did.
movement.
You did some
'cause
good head
I'm going
movements.
to keep my head
We're
really
looking-
still.
So we're looking at the sort of $500 million range.
What happens if I blink?
Well, you've just revealed quite a lot.
Oh,
Frankly, I'm very good at this.
okay.
So
Maybe you should think about auctioneering then.
yeah, you're nodding quite a lot. It sounds and feels to me that it's around this range, around the upward
Feels like
range.
you all had a great exit.
He did a good nod, didn't he? Honestly, I'd be fucking thrilled with that. I'm sure you are pretty thrilled with that. Congratulations, well done for playing. And we're not officially saying
Is this a new theme? Are you going to do this in all?
just for you,
Oh.
just for you, because I knew
No,
that you
just
weren't going to
people
talk
who
about
are
it.
super humble who won't talk about these things.
Yeah,
All right.
We
exactly.
must trick them into it.
For people who are really
Smart.
humble, we
If we
bring
had-
out my toddler toys.
Yeah.
And
if we
I
had Dan
think-
on, Dan would be like, "We are worth
yeah,
hundreds of millions."
yeah, you don't need toddler toys for me, but
I
for
know.
you who keeps it classy, we bring out the magnets for sure.
Keep it classy then.
Yeah, exactly. Damian, firstly, congratulations. I know it's bittersweet, it's difficult, you're still working through it and stuff, but I think the biggest congratulations is you built an amazing brand on the internet and
that's
everyone
true.
loves it.
Yeah.
So congrats for that.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.